Okay, so let's talk about how we graph stuff, what we're going to do to graph in general. And in general, we're just going to graph working from what we know about equations of graphs. We're going to graph and be able to get things going on. So, say I draw in a beautiful axis like this. It's a rather thick one. But I've been given a graph. I've been given a graph y. I'm just going to make this a little bit thinner. I've been given a graph y equals 2 sine x. Y equals 2 sine of 3 outside of let's make this an easier number. So let's go 2 outside of theta, take pi on 2 plus 3. Alright? So I go, okay, where do I go? Well, remember, you've got 4 things this is telling you. It's one telling you the amplitude. It's also telling you the principal axis. It's telling you the period using that value, and it's telling you the horizontal translation. So you know a lot of information from this graph, and you've got to be able to interpret this. So I'm going to start with the principal axis. Your principal axis is your middle line, and that's 3. Alright? So when you're drawing these graphs, this is going to be sine of theta up here. This is going to be theta up here. Normally we'd draw, we'd put 0 as our middle line of our axis, and we'd put everything from there. But there's no actual reason why you have to. And so if you want to, you could put this line, you could put this line here, if you want to, as 3. That's perfectly legitimate. That's your, the y value of that line. And then you could go right from that, and if we're doing that, we probably wouldn't have this x-axis continuing, otherwise we're saying the x-axis is 3 as well. So we've got our principal axis in there already. Okay, it's going straight along that line. Easy. And you'd want to make sure that you drew it, so you wouldn't actually need that black axis in there. You can just draw your principal axis equal to 3 along there. Then you do your amplitude. Now your amplitude means the max is 2 above, and the min is 2 below, so the max is going to be at 5, the min is going to be at 1. So I'm just going to put that on my y-axis. I'm actually not going to put that in yet, because I don't know exactly where everything is, because I haven't worked out this shift, and I haven't worked out the period. Alright, so say I want to draw this graph maybe from 0 to 4 pi. Okay, so there's 0, here's 4 pi here. 2 pi is somewhere in the middle. So once I've sort of thought about my principal axis, I'm going to, number 3, I'm going to think about my period. Now my period is 2 pi over b. That's 2 pi in this case over 2. So my period is pi. That means this graph is going to repeat itself. It's going to cycle every pi. So in 4 pi, it's going to cycle 4 times. Now if you remember from your what you remember from the sine curve, at the angle of 0, the value of the sine function is actually 0. Now in this case, because our principal axis is 3, that would mean that if we didn't have a horizontal shift, the value at 0 would be 3, because the principal axis tells you the middle of the function. But we have one more piece of information that we need to consider, and that is the horizontal translation. Now this tells me that it's been translated pi on 2 to the right. That's because I've got that negative value there. So that tells me it's pi on 2 to the right. Now I just want to, as a bit of a side note, just point your attention to the fact that this number 2 is outside the brackets. That is essential if you're actually trying to work out what the horizontal translation is. If you're not and you just want to know the period, it doesn't matter if it's inside or outside that bracket. But if you have a horizontal translation, you're trying to work it out, that number must be outside the bracket, because this is not the same as what we've got above. What we've done in the function above is we've factorized, we've taken out the 2 from that inner thing. So if we were going to factorize this one and take it out, you'll see it's a different graph because we've taken 2 out. So we actually need to make this pi on 4 so that when we multiply that back through, it would become pi on 2. So just be really careful about that. If you've got something written like this, you need to convert it to that before you work out the horizontal translation. That's a side note. Do come and talk about that, but if you're not sure what we're talking about there, but make sure you can do that. Let's just erase that so it doesn't get a little bit confusing. What's going on there? Cool. All right. So, what does our horizontal translation pi on 2 to the right means? Well, it means that point that would normally be at 0 is now going to be at pi on 2. Well, that's 2 pi. That's pi. So that point normally at 0 is going to be right here at pi on 2. Then we know that, okay, this cycles, doesn't it? This cycles every pi on 2. So that's 3 pi on 2 there. So that means it's going to cycle in that pi. Okay? The period is pi, so it's going to cycle once every pi. So that means it's going to have a maximum and a minimum in between this pi, and it's also going to come back down because it goes up and down and back. So it's going to have a middle point there, and it's going to have endpoints there. And then it's going to have a maximum in between the middle and the smallest point and a minimum in here. And we can keep on drawing it exactly like that, with these 3 points on the x-axis or the theta axis occurring every pi on 2, and we'll get all the way over here and we'll get to there. So let's go and let's see if we can make this work, and then we'll go pi up here and a point down there, and a point up there, point down there, point up there. I hope I haven't missed any points. I don't think I have. So it's going to look like this. And up we go. Beautiful. Now what's going to happen down here? Well, the period is pi, remember. So let's look about pi on from 0. Pi on from 0 is actually 0. So that means at 0, it must be 0. Pi on back from there is here. So we're going to go down and up. Now you said it has to repeat 4 times because the period is pi. Well, let's count. Does it repeat? We go from there to there, 1 repeat, 2 repeats, 3 repeats, and 4 repeats. So yes, it does. That's your graph. Now, if you're going, not sure if I can do that yet, that's okay. As long as you know what each of these things does to the graph, that's a really important thing. Then you've got to just work out what each of those does. Then start off with, right, I know my horizontal translation is whatever it is. So say your horizontal translation is pi. Okay, so therefore the point that is normally at 0 is going to occur at pi. So I'm going to plot that point there. Now where do I know how high to put it? Well, I know that if I'm doing the sine function, I know that it would normally occur at sine of theta equals 0, but because of my principal axis, it's going to occur wherever my principal axis occurs. So you can plot your principal axis, you put your point that's at 0 at the horizontal translation point. And then you know your period, so you know how many times it's going to cycle, you know where it's going to get back to 0, so you can put that point in. Then there's going to be another 0 right in the middle. And then you can just plot in your maximums and your minimums. Make sure when you're doing this that you use your calculator, because what I want to see is I want to see your principal axis on your graph. All right, your maximum and minimums must be in the right position. You can get that off GSolve. Okay, I want exact values of x-intercept. But again, if you went solve n on your calculator and you put the function, so say we put this in our calculator and used option calc solve n, not using the graph at all, but just doing option calc solve n, you get 2 sine 2 theta. You put that plus 3, you say that's equal to 0, will give you exact values. You just have to pick the ones between 0 and 4 pi. Alternatively, you can just graph it this way and then check it using your calculator. And then you know the amplitude just will move that maximum and minimum point up or down. Have a go, practice, enjoy!